Chapter 21: Organizational Systems. At least Dad liked to go to the candy store as much as Bat did. That was one good thing about every other weekends. On Saturday morning, after breakfast and dishes, Dad pulled their bicycles out of his garage. Unlike the garage at home, which was twice as big and 4 times as crowded, Dad's garage was labeled and organized. Helmets were kept in a clear plastic bin marked helmets. The bikes, instead of leaning up against a wall or on each other, were pulled neatly into a bike rack like the one at school. And Dad always arranged them in order of size left to right: large, medium, small. A metal rack in one corner held car supplies, spare containers of oil, a big jug of windshield wiper fluid, a little vacuum that sat ready on its charger. There was a tool bench, too, an assortment of wrenches swung from hooks across the front. Coffee cans held screws and nails. Sometimes Dad let Bat pound nails into pieces of scrap wood, as long as he wore safety goggles. Bat approved of Dad's garage. It was just under a 1-mile ride to the Sugar Shack, Bat's favorite candy store. To get there, Bat and Janie and Dad rode out of Dad's apartment complex and down a bike path towards Central Quincy. They crossed the river on a bridge made just for bicycles and pedestrians before turning onto 3rd Street. While Bat was double-checking the lock on his bike outside the Sugar Shack, he heard someone say his name. It was Israel, from school. It took Bat a second to figure out who he was, because Bat hadn't ever seen Israel anywhere but at school, and never on a weekend. "What are you doing here?" Israel asked. He was smiling in a way that showed almost all his teeth. He had, Bat noticed, a piece of something green, maybe cucumber, stuck in between the 2 front teeth. "We're going to buy some candy," Bat said. "Cool," Israel said. Then he said, "We just had brunch next door." And he pointed to the Broken Yoke Cafe. A man and woman were pushing through the door just then, and they waved. Israel waved back. "That's what I would have guessed," Bat said. "You have food in your teeth." Israel's smile fell away. "Okay," said Bat. "See you Monday at school." "Hey," said Israel. "Wait!" Bat waited. "I was wondering about the skunk. Do you still have him?" "Of course I do," said Bat. Then, "Well, not right now because I had to spend the weekend with my dad." "Oh," said Israel. "I didn't know your parents were divorced." Bat didn't say anything to that because it wasn't a question. Still, Israel stood there on the sidewalk like he was waiting for Bat to say something. The grown-ups who had waved at Israel walked over and stood behind him, and now it felt like all 3 of them were waiting for Bat to say something, or to do something. "Well, goodbye," Bat said, and he walked away. "Hey, sport, is that a friend from school?" Dad's face looked just about as excited as it looked when he was watching baseball. "Bat doesn't have friends," Janie said, but not in a mean voice, just a matter-of-fact voice. "I'm sure that's not true," Dad said. "It's not true," Bat answered. "Lawrence is my friend, and Mr. Grayson." "Oh, Bat, grown-ups don't count," Janie said. Then she pulled open the door to the candy store and held it for Bat to pass inside. The Sugar Shack was an exceptional candy store. It had bins full of M&Ms separated into colors, so if you wanted exactly 11 greens and 11 blues, but no yellows, reds, or oranges, as Bat did, you could get exactly that. Along the back wall were all the gummies: gummy bears, gummy worms, gummy sharks, gummy hippos, gummy rhinos, gummy jellyfish, gummy dinosaurs, gummy frogs, gummy sea stars, gummy zebras, gummy camels, gummy parrots, gummy crabs. Bat didn't like gummy candy, but he always got one gummy sea star anyway. He liked the way they felt in his hand. Big barrels full of hard candies formed the aisles. Jawbreakers and gumballs and candy necklaces and rock candy and ring pops. Just inside the door was a case of jelly beans arranged in a rainbow of colors. Near the counter stood a candy bar display with all the ordinary stuff, but harder to find candy bars too, like violet crumble bars and zagnut bars. You sure inherited my sweet tooth, Dad said, loading up his own plastic bag with jelly beans. Actually, Bat said, teeth have nothing to do with it. People taste with their tongues and their noses. Do you stick that gummy bear up your nose to taste it? Janie asked. Her bag was full of a mishmash of candies that didn't make any sense to Bat. It's a gummy sea star, Bat said, and no, the way something smells is part of how you taste it. Well, I guess that's why people don't eat skunk meat, Janie said. P.U. She wrinkled up her nose and stuck out her tongue. Thor doesn't stink, Bat said. He doesn't even spray yet. But he will, Janie said. I hope not until after we give him to the rescue. Maybe we'll keep him, Bat whispered. Sport, your mom can't adopt every stray animal that comes into her clinic, Dad said. She'd have a zoo if she did. We won't adopt all of them, Bat said. Just this one. Mom said we're only going to keep him for a couple more weeks, Janie told Dad. But Bat is getting too attached. Bat started bouncing on the balls of his feet. He clutched his plastic candy bag in his fist. It crinkled in a way that bothered his ears, so he loosened his fingers and let it go. Blue and green M&Ms bounced and rolled across the floor of the sugar shack. Sport, you've got to be more careful, Dad said, his eyebrows pointing in at his nose. Bat felt tears welling up in his eyes. He swiped at his face with the arm of his shirt and turned toward the door. Under the sole of his shoe, he felt the crunch squish of a flattened M&M. Chapter 22. Baseball and Braiding. Before bed on Sunday night, Janie always took a shower and been weaving it into 6 braids while it was still damp so that she could have wavy hair in the morning. Janie's hair was usually stick straight, like Dad's and Bat's, though hers was a dark brown instead of black. When she came out of the bathroom in her pajamas carrying a wide-toothed comb and 6 hair ties, Bat asked, "Can I braid it?" "I can do it myself," Janie said. "Let him try," Dad said from the couch, where he sat watching baseball on TV. He had an orange and black baseball cap on his head because tonight he was rooting for the Orioles. He had a collection of caps for all the teams he liked, and whenever one of his teams was playing, he'd select the right baseball cap from the top shelf in his closet and wear it for the whole game. Dad said he didn't believe in luck, but it sort of seemed like he did. "Okay," said Janie, "but if you mess up the braids, I'm going to redo them." She sat cross-legged on the floor facing the TV. Bat sat behind her on the couch next to Dad. Janie handed him the comb. Bat started combing at the bottom, the way Janie had taught him, so he wouldn't pull her hair. He worked out all the little tangles with the teeth of the comb as he made his way up toward the top of her head. Soon he could pull the comb straight through her hair from the very top to the ends without snagging at all. Then he divided her hair into 6 sections, 2 in the front, 2 in the middle, and 2 in the back. The back 2 sections looked a little thicker than the others, but Bat didn't think Janie would notice. He picked up the front left section of hair and started braiding. "Go, go, go!" Dad yelled at the TV. One of the baseball players had made a good hit and was running as fast as he could around the bases. "I think baseball is the most boring game you watch," Janie said, "even more boring than football." "That's because you won't let me explain it to you," Dad said, adjusting his cap. "If you understand the game, it's fascinating." Bat reached the bottom of the first section of hair, and wound a pink elastic band around its end. The braid wasn't perfectly neat and straight like the braids Janie did, but it wasn't bad. Moving on to the other front section, Bat focused on making the second braid even better than the first. Make sure you're braiding it tight, Janie said, so it's really wavy. I am, Bat said. Bat loved braiding Janie's hair, even though he usually wasn't very good at hand things. He liked the feeling of the damp, heavy hair. He liked organizing it into a series of smaller, neatly contained braids. He liked feeling close to Janie like this, by helping her and touching her without having to have a big conversation that might turn into a fight. Getting along with people was hard for Bat. Figuring out what they meant when they said something or when they made certain faces at him. People were complicated, but braiding was easy. There, he'd finished the second braid and wrapped the end of this one in a dark green elastic. Janie reached up and touched the braid, then pulled it in front of her face so she could see it. Not bad, she said. Yes, yelled Dad. He stood up from the couch, grabbing the cap from his head and waving it around. It wasn't the same as being at home. Mom wasn't here. Thor wasn't here. But maybe every other weekends could be okay. Chapter 23. Windows. Some days, Bat was the first person awake. It didn't happen often because Mom was a morning person. Usually, when Bat woke up, he went straight into the kitchen to find Mom sitting at the table with a cup of coffee and a book. But every now and then, Bat awoke to a completely quiet house. A sleeping house. Tuesday was one of those mornings. Bat woke up suddenly and completely to a still dark sky outside his window. He blinked and sat up, slipped his feet into his slippers, took the skunk sling from the doorknob where he'd hung it the night before, and went into the living room. The living room windows faced the front yard. Bat could make out the shape of the big oak tree on the lawn. It was a darker shadow against the velvety early morning sky. He went straight to Thor's enclosure and found the kit tucked in his sleeping corner, surrounded by the rice-filled socks that made a nice padded nook. He stroked Thor's back, feeling the rise and fall of his sleeping breaths before gently scooping him up. Thor let out a little high-pitched yawning sound, his tiny paws swimming through the air as Bat settled him into the sling. Once inside, Thor rustled around for a moment before quieting back down. In the kitchen, Bat opened the refrigerator as quietly as he could and retrieved the formula. He filled the syringe and held it under a stream of hot water to warm it up. Thor could smell the formula. Bat could tell because he wriggled around in his pouch. It's coming, little guy, Bat said. When the formula was warmed, he went back into the living room and curled up on the window bench. Already the sky was changing. It was still dark, but now Bat could make out the branches of the trees. He heard the very earliest morning birds, the ones that sang each day as the sky began to lighten. Gently, Bat reached into the pouch and pulled out the skunk kit. It was too dark to see clearly, but Bat didn't want to startle him by turning on a lamp. So he brought the syringe down to Thor's face and let the skunk find the tip by smell. As Thor had his breakfast, the sky turned violet and pink, then orangey red. The tree's trunk lightened from black to brown, and its leaves transformed to green. First birds called louder, waking up their friends, and they became a chorus of song. Bat looked down to see if Thor had finished his formula and gasped in surprise. The two tight slits that had been closed since Mom first brought him home were open. Bat could see Thor's eyes. They were the darkest black Bat had ever seen. Hey there, Bat cooed down at Thor. Good morning, little kit. Thor kept licking at the tip of the syringe, but his quick pink tongue hesitated just a bit when Bat spoke. Maybe he was listening. Maybe he understood. Bat stroked back the soft black and white fuzz on Thor's little forehead. I see you, he said. Do you see me? Mom emerged from her bedroom, tying the belt of her robe. Bat, she said, you're up early. Mom, Bat said, look, Thor's eyes are open. Mom came over to see. Look at that, she said, resting her hand on the top of Bat's head and petting his hair, just as Bat stroked Thor. His eyes are beautiful, Mom, Bat said. Don't you think his eyes are beautiful? Mom sat down on the window seat next to Bat. I think that's the first time I've ever heard you mention someone's eyes, she said. Most eyes are boring, Bat said, but Thor's eyes are amazing. Look, they are the color of outer space. They're open. Bat, Mom said. What color are my eyes? Brown, Bat answered, still staring at the skunk kit. Droplets of formula hung from little black and white hairs all around his mouth. Nope, said Mom. They're hazel. This got Bat's attention. Really? He looked up and stared at Mom's face. Her eyes were golden brown with little flecks of green and yellow in them. They look like marbles, Bat said. I never noticed. Well, you never have been all that interested in people's eyes. Bat shrugged. I never thought about it, he said. Some people say you can tell a lot about a person by looking into their eyes, Mom said. What do you think about that? Bat thought about it. I don't get it, he said. If I want to know something about a person, I ask. I think you can tell more about people from what they say than from their eyes. Said Mom. You have an interesting way of seeing the world, Bat. Bat stared deep into Thor's space black eyes. He tried to see what he could learn from them. He looked first into the left eye, and then into the right, and then into the left again. It's hard to look into two eyes at the same time, he said. Which one am I supposed to look in? I don't think it matters. Try looking into my eyes, Mom said, and see what you can learn about me. Bat tucked Thor back into the pouch. Mom took the syringe and set it down. She took Bat's hands into hers and smiled at him. Bat smiled back, and then he tried to see what Mom's eyes could tell him. The left eye had 3 more flecks of green than the right eye. The right eye had 1 more fleck of yellow. The black points in the middle were exactly the same size. Her eyes were shiny. Hazel is cool, Bat said. It's like a rainbow of all the boring colors. Funny, Bat, Mom said. Do you know what I see when I look into your eyes? Brown and black, Bat said, with white all around. Yes, said Mom, I do see that. But I also see your sweetness and your thoughtful nature and your busy, busy mind.